The rain was relentless that night in Seattle, mirroring the storm brewing inside me. I am Bertram, 46, an IT specialist, and until a few weeks ago I thought I had everything. A beautiful home overlooking Puget Sound, a stable career, and a wife, Giselle, whom I adored. Our life wasn't perfect, of course. We had our share of disagreements, mostly about household chores and Giselle's increasingly frequent late nights at the office. She worked as a marketing executive for a major tech firm, and I understood the demands of her job. Or at least I thought I did. The first flicker of doubt ignited about a month prior. Giselle started taking her phone everywhere, even to the bathroom. She'd clutch it protectively, angling the screen away from me if I happened to glance over. I chalked it up to work emails, sensitive projects, the usual corporate secrecy. But then came the hushed phone calls, always taken outside or in another room, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. One evening I was working late myself, trying to debug a particularly nasty piece of code. Giselle had told me she was going to a networking event downtown. Around 10 p.m. I decided to call her, just to see how it was going. Her phone went straight to voicemail. I figured she was busy, mingling, or perhaps the reception was bad. I sent a text. Hope you're having a good time. Call me when you get a chance. 2 hours later, still no call. I started to feel uneasy. I checked her location on the Find My Friends app, something we'd set up for emergencies. The app showed her at a small, obscure bar on the other side of the city, a place she'd never mentioned before. I told myself there could be a perfectly reasonable explanation. Maybe the networking event had moved locations. Maybe she'd decided to unwind with colleagues after a long day. But a seed of suspicion had been planted, and it began to take root. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. The following days were a blur of anxiety and mounting unease. I found myself scrutinizing Giselle's every move, searching for clues, for confirmation of my growing fears. She seemed distant, preoccupied, her smiles forced, her kisses perfunctory. Then came the night I found the receipt. It was tucked away in her purse, a small, crumpled piece of paper from a fancy Italian restaurant, a place far too expensive for a casual business dinner. The date and time on the receipt coincided with one of her late nights at the office. The restaurant was known for its romantic ambience, its intimate setting, its reputation as a lover's rendezvous. My heart pounded in my chest as I stared at the receipt. I felt a cold dread wash over me, a sickening realization that my worst fears were coming true. I tried to rationalize it, to find an innocent explanation, but the evidence was damning. The restaurant, the late hour, the secrecy, it all pointed to one inescapable conclusion. Giselle was cheating on me. I confronted her that night, my voice trembling with a mixture of anger and disbelief. Where were you, Giselle? Tell me the truth. She hesitated, her eyes darting nervously around the room. I told you I was at the office. Working late, I held up the receipt. And this is from Bella, not a romantic dinner for two. Who were you with, Giselle? Her face paled, her carefully constructed facade crumbling before my eyes. She stammered, it's not what you think. What is it, Giselle? Tell me. Who were you with? She finally broke down, tears streaming down her face. It was a colleague. We had dinner, that's all, just dinner, I repeated, my voice laced with sarcasm. At a romantic restaurant late at night. Don't insult my intelligence, Giselle. I know what's going on, she confessed then, the words tumbling out in a torrent of guilt and remorse. It had started as a harmless flirtation, she said, a connection with someone at work. But it had quickly escalated into something more, an emotional affair, a physical betrayal. The man's name was Quentin, a senior vice president at her company, a smooth-talking charmer with a reputation for seducing his female colleagues. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. The woman I loved, the woman I'd trusted with my heart, had betrayed me in the most profound way imaginable. The pain was unbearable, a searing agony that ripped through my soul. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't comprehend the magnitude of her deception. How could you do this to me, Giselle? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. How could you betray our marriage, our love? She sobbed, begging for forgiveness, promising it would never happen again. But the trust was broken, the foundation of our relationship shattered beyond repair. I knew in that moment that I could never look at her the same way again. The following weeks were a living hell. We went through the motions of marriage, living under the same roof, sharing the same bed, but the intimacy was gone, replaced by a cold, unbridgeable chasm. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, couldn't escape the torment of her betrayal. I replayed the events of the past few months in my mind, searching for signs I'd missed, for clues I'd ignored. I felt like a fool, a naive idiot who'd been blind to the truth. I considered leaving, walking away from the marriage, starting a new life on my own. But the thought of losing Giselle, of giving up on our dreams, was too painful to bear. I clung to the hope that we could somehow salvage our relationship, that we could find a way to forgive and forget. We started couples therapy, hoping to address the underlying issues that had led to Giselle's infidelity. The therapist, a kind, empathetic woman named Dr. Anya, listened patiently as we recounted our story, probing our emotions, challenging our assumptions. Giselle expressed remorse, admitting her mistake, promising to work on rebuilding our trust. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was still being hidden, that she wasn't being entirely honest with me. One day, while Giselle was at work, I decided to do some digging. I know it was wrong, a violation of her privacy, but I couldn't resist the urge to uncover the truth. I went through her phone, searching for evidence of her affair with Quentin. I found deleted messages, hidden photos, and a series of encrypted emails that aroused my suspicion. I managed to decrypt one of the emails, and what I found sent a chill down my spine. The email was from Quentin, and it contained details of a plan they'd hatched to leave their spouses and start a new life together. They'd been secretly saving money, making arrangements to move to another city, and even discussing having children. The email revealed the depth of their deception, the extent of their betrayal. It was clear that their affair wasn't just a fleeting indiscretion, but a calculated, premeditated act of treachery. I was devastated. The woman I loved had not only cheated on me, but she'd also been planning to abandon me, to run away with her lover and start a new life without me. The pain was unbearable, a crushing weight that threatened to suffocate me. I felt like my world was crumbling around me, like everything I'd believed in was a lie. I confronted Giselle that night, presenting her with the email as evidence of her betrayal. She denied it at first, claiming it was a fabrication, a misunderstanding. But when I read her the contents of the email, she broke down, admitting the truth. She confessed that she'd been planning to leave me, that she'd fallen in love with Quentin, and that she'd convinced herself that I would be better off without her. I was furious, heartbroken, and utterly betrayed. I couldn't believe that the woman I'd loved, the woman I'd trusted with my life, could be so deceitful, so manipulative, so cruel. "I want you out of my house, Giselle," I said, my voice trembling with anger. "I never want to see you again." She begged me to reconsider, promising to end the affair, to stay with me, to make our marriage work. But I was done. I couldn't forgive her, couldn't trust her, couldn't bear to look at her without feeling a surge of anger and resentment. I filed for divorce the next day, and within a few months the proceedings were finalized. Giselle moved out of our house, and I haven't seen or spoken to her since. I learned later that her relationship with Quentin had quickly deteriorated after their affair was exposed. He'd left her for another woman, leaving her heartbroken and alone. Karma, it seemed, had finally caught up with her. I was left to pick up the pieces of my shattered life, to rebuild my trust, to heal my wounded heart. It wasn't easy, but I was determined to move on, to find happiness again, to learn from my mistakes. I threw myself into my work, spending long hours at the office, immersing myself in code and algorithms. I started exercising, going to the gym, running along the waterfront. I reconnected with old friends, spending time with them, laughing, sharing stories, and rediscovering the joy of companionship. One evening, I was at a local coffee shop, working on my laptop, when I noticed a woman sitting at the next table. Her name was Isolde, an artist who specialized in digital design. We struck up a conversation, and I was immediately drawn to her intelligence, her wit, and her genuine warmth. We started dating, and I found myself falling in love again. Isolde was everything Giselle wasn't: honest, compassionate, and fiercely loyal. After a year of dating, I proposed to Isolde, and she said yes. We were married in a small, intimate ceremony overlooking Puget Sound, surrounded by our closest friends and family. It was the happiest day of my life. I had finally found love again, a love that was built on trust, respect, and unwavering commitment. But the story doesn't end there. A few years later, I received a phone call from an unknown number. I hesitated before answering, but curiosity got the better of me. It was Giselle. Her voice was weak, trembling, filled with remorse. She told me she was sick, that she'd been diagnosed with a terminal illness, and that she didn't have much time left. She asked if I would be willing to see her, to talk to her one last time before she died. I was torn. Part of me wanted to hang up the phone, to erase her from my life forever. But another part of me, a part that still remembered the good times we'd shared, felt a pang of sympathy for her. I agreed to meet her. We met at a small park near the hospital where she was being treated. She was pale, gaunt, and barely recognizable. She apologized for everything she'd done, for the pain she'd caused me, for the betrayal that had shattered our marriage. She said she understood if I couldn't forgive her, but she wanted me to know that she regretted her actions, that she'd learned from her mistakes, and that she was truly sorry. I listened to her, my heart filled with a mixture of pity and resentment. I couldn't bring myself to forgive her completely, but I did offer her a measure of compassion. I told her that I hoped she found peace, that she could find solace in her final days. We talked for a while longer, reminiscing about the past, sharing memories of our life together. And then we said goodbye. Giselle passed away a few weeks later. I attended her funeral not out of love but out of respect for the woman she once was. As I stood there, watching her coffin being lowered into the ground, I realized that I had finally let go of the anger and resentment that had consumed me for so long. I had forgiven her, not for her sake, but for my own. I had finally closed that chapter of my life, and I was ready to move on, to embrace the future with Isolde, and to cherish the love that we shared. The rain had stopped that night in Seattle, and the clouds had parted, revealing a sky full of stars. I looked up at the heavens, feeling a sense of peace and gratitude wash over me. I had survived the storm, and I had emerged stronger, wiser, and more resilient than ever before. And I knew in that moment that I was finally free.